Well, today we're doing a 90-minute session on introduction to adult safeguarding. So this is just a brief introduction session. Okay. My name's Vicky Morgan. I work for the Learning and Development team based at North Northamptonshire Council, but looking after learning and development for North and West currently. I've been around adult social care for the last 25 years or so. So in that time, I've seen quite a lot of changes in adult social care and a lot of changes to the legislation and stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of that today and some of the changes and some of the new legislation that's come in for adult safeguarding. Okay, so we have got, just to remind you, if you can keep yourselves on mute. Obviously, we're going to be quite a big group today. So if you can stay on mute and put any questions you've got in the chat, that would be great. If you can switch your mobile phones off. I've got someone in the chat saying they can't hear me. Okay, but I'm guessing everyone else can.
I can hear you fine, Vicky.
Yeah. Don't know if Chloe can pick that one up in the chat. Okay, so if you can switch off your mobile phones to silent, vibrate, etc., and so you're not taking calls during this. And as I say, if you can ask questions by typing in the chat box or raising your hand, and then we'll keep an eye on the chat. Okay, and the hands. Okay, I have got a question about the volume. Okay, I don't know about turning the volume down. Okay. So what we're covering today is being aware of legislation and policy that surrounds safeguarding adults, understand the definitions of abuse, types of abuse and how to recognise these, and understand how to report and record suspected abuse. Okay, we have had a message around turning cameras off if you're not speaking. Okay, obviously on the recording that your camera picture will stay on the recording. Okay. So hopefully those outcomes match that. Okay, so hopefully we're all aware that the current legislation for adult safeguarding sits under the Care Act. Okay, so we've had the Care Act since 2015. Okay, and this said that local authorities have a number of functions and duties. This is to make sure that people who live in all areas receive services that prevent their care needs from becoming more serious or delay their impact of their needs, can get information and advice they need to make good decisions about care and support, have a range of provision of high quality and appropriate services to choose from, and promote wider partnership working and responsibilities with other organisations such as day centre, voluntary and charity organisations. So those are some of the broad functions of the Care Act, but obviously it also covers adult safeguarding. And one of the big principles of the Care Act is around well-being. Okay, so the core purpose of adult care and support is to help people achieve the goals and outcomes that matter to them in all areas of their life. So under the Care Act 2014, local authorities are under a duty to promote well-being when carrying out any care and support function. Okay, so that includes adult safeguarding. So when we're doing anything to do with adult safeguarding, we need to consider the well-being of our adult. Okay. Okay, so I was wondering if anyone would be able to have a think about what well-being means to you. Okay, so what is it that we need for well-being? So if we can use the chat box, and if a few of you can put some ideas, obviously you're a massive group, so I won't be able to catch everyone's ideas. If a few people could put some ideas in, that would be fab. Okay, and also have a think about what it might feel like if you can't achieve well-being. Okay. So what is it that you think you need? So we've got a physical, social, and emotional well-being. So yeah, we need to make sure that we're looked after physically, socially, and emotionally. Yeah, we've got feeling safe and secure, feeling happy. Yeah, personal independence. Got safe and happy there. Meeting all a couple of people that have quoted Maslow there. So meeting areas of needs, being listened to without judgment, self-care, listened to, social opportunities, being respected. Okay, dignity. So what about if you if you were unable to achieve well-being? How can that feel for people? So if you're not able to reach well-being, we've also got spiritual and dignity come through. So what's it going to feel like if you're not able to? Yeah, so we've got helpless, neglected, sad, vulnerable, unsafe, frightened, vulnerable, isolated, depressed. Yeah. Okay. Mental health will be affected, anxious, ignored, deflated, no self-worth. So quite a lot of things that people are going to feel. So that's why well-being is so important, because it kind of helps in all areas. So the Care Act came out with a list of things that they thought were important for well-being. They have said that this isn't an exhaustive list. Okay, and there's no hierarchy about it all. Okay, so all things within it are equal. No thing is more important than anything else. And it also considers how well-being is very individual for a person. So well-being we'll all rate these with a different level of importance depending on who we are and what we do in our lives. Okay, so quite a lot of these we've got. So the personal dignity, having that physical and mental health and emotional well-being, being protected from abuse or neglect. Now, sometimes we can forget that because we assume that naturally in our lives. We can kind of do that for ourselves. But for a lot of the people that we work with, the adults that we're working with, they're not always able to do that and keep themselves safe. Okay. Having control over our everyday lives, again, that's something we tend to take for granted. We tend to assume that we have some level of control over our everyday lives. But again, for the adults that we look after with care and support needs, they're not always able to control their everyday lives. That they can participate in work, education, training or recreation. I think I've got possibly over 60 of you on the call today. So obviously you're all participating in some education today. Okay. We've got social and economic well-being as well. So, having enough money and enough kind of social well-being to keep us happy and safe. That we've got domestic, family and personal well-being. So not everyone has that within their lives as well. That we've got suitable accommodation. Okay. And that the individual's able to contribute to society. So that's in a way that, whichever way they think is important and they'd like to do it. Okay, so that covers quite a lot in that list. It's quite comprehensive. Okay, and these are the sort of areas that we're kind of looking at when we're thinking about well-being. Okay, so that's something just to bear in mind and think about all the way through. So whenever we're talking about safeguarding, we need to consider our adults' well-being in this. Okay, because if we don't, we'll be suffering from all those things we spoke about: the low self-esteem, the being ignored, the anxious, the deflated, the no self-worth. Okay. So what does safeguarding mean to you? Okay, so obviously we've been talking about safeguarding for at least the last 15 years. Okay, so what is it we mean when we're talking about safeguarding? Yeah, so if you can put some ideas in the chat box. Yep, so protecting someone from harm. And Suzanne has confirmed that the presentation will be shared afterwards. Yeah, we've also got agencies and trusted individuals that can protect people, minimizing risk, ensuring you and an individual are placed at risk, removing potential things that could cause harm, protection from harm from themselves and others, trusted people in society who have a duty of care to be objective about well-being, prevention, protection, accountability, empowerment and partnership. So quite a lot of the Care Act safeguarding principles there. It should happen in schools and hospitals. That it promotes well-being and human rights of individuals. Absolutely. Obviously, we've got the Human Rights Act as well, but obviously safeguarding runs alongside that. Okay, quite a lot of you have used the term protection in there. Okay, so obviously before we had safeguarding, we used to talk about the protection of vulnerable people. I think we have confirmed that the presentation will be on the website afterwards. Okay, for those that are asking. Okay. Yeah, signposting to other services, that can be part of safeguarding as well. Okay, so quite a lot of ideas then on what safeguarding is. Yeah, ensuring there are processes in place and action plans. So a lot of different organisations have got a safeguarding duty, haven't they? Because they have contact with adults and children. So what we've got in the Care Act, the statutory guidance defines safeguarding as protecting an adult's right to live in safety, free from abuse and neglect. Is about people and organisations working together to prevent and stop both the risks and experience of abuse or neglect, while at the same time making sure that the adult's well-being is promoted, including where appropriate having regard to their views, wishes, feelings and beliefs in deciding on any action. This must recognise that adults sometimes have complex interpersonal relationships and may be ambivalent, unclear or unrealistic about their personal circumstances. So obviously, one of the things about working in adult social care is we work with a lot of individuals. So there is no one size fits all approach for people. Okay, so it is about getting to know people, finding out what is important for them. We've got the well-being in there, which we've already spoken about. So the fact that we need to make sure that that's promoted at all times. And also the fact that we need to get to know the person and find out what it is that they want. So what are their wishes, feelings and beliefs in this? Okay. And also having that awareness that, are they aware and are they realistic about their personal circumstances? So obviously we need to weigh all of that up when we're considering whether something's safeguarding or not. Okay. So we also need to think about how do we safeguard adults? Okay. So within the Care Act, they've set out what are the aims of safeguarding. So obviously we need to make sure we try and stop abuse and neglect wherever possible. So that would be the first one. It would be great if it never happened, but obviously we know it does. And we can probably never get rid of that. Okay, but we need to make sure we try as much as possible by doing things like making sure people know what they're looking for, to make sure that places are inspected, that people, know what they're looking for when they go into places. Okay. We need to make sure that we prevent harm and reduce the risk of abuse or neglect to adults with care and support needs. Okay, so maybe that's by making sure that we've got good policies and procedures in place, that staff are checked before they start work with adults, with care and support needs. Okay. And we need to make sure that adults are safeguarded in a way that supports them in making choices and having control about how they want to live. So sometimes someone who's not empowered in their life can sometimes become more subject to abuse or neglect because they're not in control. So as soon as you relinquish some control to somebody, you are making yourself more vulnerable to abuse or neglect because you're relying on other people more. Okay. And yeah, sometimes that's part of getting older. It might be part of a condition that's deteriorating. Okay. And we also make sure we need to promote an approach that concentrates on improving life for the adults concerned. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're making the best life for our adults that we're looking after within the county. We also have a duty to raise public awareness, so communities as a whole, alongside professionals, play their part in preventing, identifying and responding to abuse or neglect. So the more people that are aware of what to look for and where to report it, and making sure people know what to do if they've got a concern, who they should go and talk to. We need to provide information and support in accessible ways to help people understand the different types of abuse, how to stay safe and what to do to raise a concern about the safety or well-being of an adult. So it could be making sure that adults themselves know what to expect, what's right, what's wrong, what standards should they be able to expect when they're being cared for by somebody. Okay, because sometimes the first time people have contact with adult social care is when they receive it, so they may not know what to expect. Okay, and we also need to make sure we address what has caused the abuse or neglect, so making sure that we try and change things. Yeah, see if we can make a difference from whatever way that is, whether it's by, education or providing support. Okay, or whether it's by prosecution and involving the police. Okay, sometimes there's lots of different avenues that we need to consider. Okay, so when we're talking about adults with care and support needs, so quite a few of you have used the term vulnerable adults, which is still used in quite a lot of areas. The Care Act did coin the term adults with care and support needs, because actually sometimes people don't see themselves as vulnerable. Okay, even though they are. So it tends to talk all the way through about adults with care and support needs. So that's what the phrase I've tended to use throughout this presentation. So we need to think about people who are elderly and frail due to ill health, physical disability or cognitive impairment. Could also be people who've got a learning disability. They may have a physical disability or a sensory impairment. They may have mental health needs, including dementia or personality disorder. It may be that they've got a long-term illness or condition, or maybe they misuse substances or alcohol. So all of those things can make people an adult with care and support needs. Okay. So we also need to consider what the duty of care is for people. So obviously anyone working in adult social care has got a duty of care. So when we're talking about that, we're thinking about the legal or moral responsibility to protect the safety and well-being of others. So this includes taking adequate and reasonable steps so that the other individuals or their property are protected from harm. So that's our duty of care when we're working around our adults with care and support needs. We need to try and protect them and keep them safe, but also not just protect their own safety, but protect their well-being as well. So all those things we talked about, the things that make the person who they are. Okay. And then we've got responsibilities. So we need to make sure that we work in a way that will help prevent abuse, so that we're observant, we notice when things aren't right, we notice changes in our adult, and we know what to do when we notice those changes. We know who we should go and talk to. Okay. So when we're thinking about abuse, one of the things the Care Act doesn't do is give a definition of abuse, as abuse and neglect can take many forms and will be different for different people. Okay, so it does acknowledge that abuse is so wide that actually, you can't put a definite definition on it. But what it does do is it does produce 10 categories of abuse and the types of behaviour that could indicate an adult is at risk of abuse or neglect. Okay, so we're going to have a look at those 10 types of abuse and neglect now. So these are the 10 categories that the Care Act brought in. Okay, so we've got physical, sexual, psychological and emotional, finance, neglect and acts of omission, discriminatory, domestic abuse, modern slavery, organisational and self-neglect. So all of these are quite wide. So we're going to run through and think about some of the different things that we might expect to see on these. So physical abuse tends to be anything that involves touching the other person. So it could be hitting, kicking, scratching, burning, anything that physically happens. Some of the sort of lesser known things that we don't always think of as abuse can be things like incorrect moving and handling as well. So sometimes that, depending on why it's happening, that can come under physical abuse as well. So it may be a carer who doesn't realise that they're moving and handling the person incorrectly. Okay, so some of the things we might see with physical abuse, it could be the bruising, it could be changes. They might flinch when a certain person's around. They might be reluctant to be alone with a certain person. They might have injuries that are in different phases of healing. They could have unexplained injuries. So they might not be able to clearly explain how their injuries happened. We might look back at records. If someone's not able to tell us what happened, it might not be documented in the records why something's happened. Okay, so all those things would be counted as physical abuse. Okay, so then we've got sexual abuse. So obviously this includes things like rape, but also being touched in a sexual way. It can include things like being asked to watch pornography, being shown indecent images. So all of those things would come under sexual abuse. Okay, so again, some of the things we might see, it could be sexualized behavior in someone who's not shown that sort of behavior before. It could be unexplained pregnancy. It could be bruising or marks around those sort of areas. So, okay, Hayley, I'm not sure quite what you mean by your question. So by withdrawal of sex, do you mean refusal of sex? Or do you mean penetration and then withdrawal? That is an interesting question. So with Hayley's asking whether it is withholding sex from the person. So we've got someone saying no, because obviously you're not doing something to the person. It might come under some of the other ones. You could possibly have it under psychological or emotional, depending on the reason why they're doing it. Okay. So the person should always be able to consent to anything sexual that's happening. Okay. Okay. So again, some of the signs that you might see would, as I say, would be bruising around those sort of areas, inner thighs, etc. It might be bleeding in that area. They may be suffering from sexually transmitted diseases when it's someone who's not sexually active. So all of those things. And again, you're going to get behaviours like being withdrawn. Okay. So the next on the list, we've got the psychological and emotional. Okay. So this is things whereby it's usually done with words or action. So this tends to be the kind of withholding for whatever reason. So, I'm not going to give you something because you've not done what I asked you to do. Okay. It can also be shouting at people. It can be being the person being put down continually, so causing really low self-esteem. Okay. So anything that's kind of emotional blackmail type things. Okay. And yeah, there's quite a lot of terms being put in about sort of gaslighting, love bombing, etc. They're not always terms that are known by everyone. So if you are writing reports, etc., you're best to stick to the facts and what's actually happened rather than using any general terms. Okay. Okay. So some of the things you might see, the person might have really low self-esteem. They might feel they might be sort of very withdrawn. They might behave differently around a different person. Okay. Again, it might be a change in the person, so it might be only in this certain situation that you see their confidence go. Yeah, or maybe if you get them into a certain situation, they might become more confident. Okay, so it might be those sort of things that make you concerned that something's going on for that person. So the next one on our list is we've got financial. So obviously this one tends to involve money or property. Okay, so it tends to be kind of withholding or taking money or property that doesn't belong to them. Okay, or benefits, those kind of things. So some of the things that you tend to look for are missing money. The person may not have food in the house that they normally would have. They may not be able to pay their bills. They may have signed property over to somebody else. Okay, they might have been coerced into that as well, so they might not have done it freely. Okay, they might have been made to feel that they had to sign things over. They might have changed their will recently. Okay, and again, it's about finding out if the person has done that out of their own free, whether they've done it because they wanted to or because somebody put pressure on them to. Okay. Again, it can be things going missing from their property. So maybe, last time you went to visit them, they had a stereo and they had a TV, but this time you've gone, they're not there. Why aren't they there? What happened to them? Yeah. Does the explanation you're given sound plausible? Yeah. Or is the person seem confused about where they've gone or unwilling to tell you? Okay. So there's lots of things around financial to think about. Okay, so it could be misusing benefits of the person. And then we've got neglect and acts of admission. So this tends to be not doing something for somebody. So instead of, usually abuse involves doing something to the person. So this is the one that involves not doing something for the person. Okay, so it might be not getting their medication on time, not paying the bills they've given you the money for, not getting the shopping they asked you to, not turning up to give the care at the time that they wanted it, not taking them to the toilet when they needed to go. All of those things could come under neglect. Yeah, so it tends to be not doing something, not giving the person their meals that they wanted, not ensuring the person's suitably dressed when they're going out. Okay. So all of those things would be neglect. So again, the person may look unkempt, so badly dressed. When you see them, they might always have been quite a smartly dressed person. You know, why have they changed? Why, if they've always taken pride in their appearance, are they not now? Yeah. Why are they in their pajamas at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Is it because they want to be and they're quite happy with that? Or is it the fact that nobody's come to get them up today and help them get dressed? Okay. There's lots of things in that, you know, why aren't they getting their medication? Why hasn't the person done the shopping that they said they'd do? Yeah. Is it a one-off or is it happening regularly? Yeah. Yeah, if the person didn't get the shopping because their car broke down on the way home and they had to sort all of that out and it's just a one-off, it's different to if it's repeatedly happening and the person's taken the money, okay, to use for something else. Okay. And then we've got discriminatory abuse. So that tends to be causing harm because of something that's different about the person. So is it because they're a different religion? Is it because of their gender? Is it because of their beliefs? Is it because of the way they dress, the way they eat, the things they do? Yeah, so it's abuse or neglect that's happened because the person's different. Okay. And then we've got domestic abuse on the list. So obviously this is around abuse, and domestic abuse can cover, similar to discriminatory, they can both cover lots of different types of abuse. So it might be physical, sexual, psychological, or emotional, and it may be neglect as well. But it's around the relationship. So are they in a personal or family relationship? So are they siblings? Are they parent-child? Are they partners? Are they husband and wife? So there needs to be that kind of domestic relationship there, okay, for it to be classed as domestic abuse. Okay, so as I say, that's right. But yeah, children can be the victims. And again, you quite often get adult children that can be the victims as well, not just under 18s. But in this, you'll have adult children as well who may still be over 18, but subject to abuse from their parents. Okay. As well as, traditionally we tend to think about parents abusing older people, but obviously it can go both ways. It can be siblings. So anyone that's in that close family relationship, okay, can be classed as domestic abuse. And again, traditionally, we tend to think of husband and wife as well, predominantly in domestic abuse, or husband and wife, husband, or wife, husband, okay, whatever the relationship is. Okay. But again, it does cover that wider kind of family relationships. And again, it's all those things we talked about, that all those signs that you'd see in physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, financial neglect, all of those different signs can be seen as this as well. Okay, we've got modern slavery next, which is a new category for 2015. So it's not one that we really talked about in adult safeguarding before then. But obviously slavery has been around for a very long time. So modern slavery is someone being kept against their will. They might have come over freely. They tend to not have their papers or the access to their own documents or benefits, passports, whatever the documents might be. Someone might well be holding them. They tend to be forced into some sort of physical labour in return for possibly accommodation or food that nowhere meets the amount that they're working, if that makes sense. It's not an equal trade-off for the work that they're doing. People tend to be living in houses of multiple occupation that aren't registered. So there tends to be lots of people living in a house or shed or caravan or whatever it happens to be together. It can happen in lots of different areas. So you tend to find modern slavery within the sex trade. within domestic servitude, within restaurants, sort of with kitchen staff, etc. There's lots of things around sort of fruit picking businesses. There was a big case up in Morecambe with is it the cockle pickers on the beach in Morecambe? We've had farm workers, nail bars, car washes, all of those sort of very low paid areas. People who go around, sort of very transient workers as well. So things like people who are going around laying driveways, etc. Anything that involves kind of physical labour, you tend to find modern slavery. So some of the things you're looking out for, you know, maybe that there's one person in charge who kind of, you don't actually ever get to speak to the people doing the work. It may be, yep, someone's put in there about latent buzzard as well. There's quite a lot of different cases out there. Okay. Quite often people have come in from other countries, so again people tend to look for people who have just arrived in the country, who have, again, they tend to be vulnerable because they're not established, they might not speak the language, they don't have money, etc. People with learning disabilities tend to fall into this as well. So again, there's quite a lot of cases where people who have been sort of subject to modern slavery for so many years, they tend to be, you know, sometimes they're unrecognisable because of the physical abuse that they've suffered during the slavery. Okay. And again, tends to be people they tend not to have regular medical checkups, etc. You know, possibly with the exception of the sexual trade. Okay. Sometimes people are better looked after because they're more useful. Okay. But again, there's quite a lot on modern slavery. There's lots of websites out there with further information on things like Gangmasters Licensing Authority. They've got quite a lot of educational videos on there, and also Hope for Justice have got quite a lot on their website as well around modern slavery. But again, if you've got concerns, if you've seen, you know, worried about the way people are being treated in an area, okay, it's worth kind of asking questions or raising concerns, because it can be quite a difficult situation to actually almost break into. So there's kind of lots of concerns it's happening, but people quite often don't want to talk about it because they're worried they'll be subject to more physical abuse. Okay. And then we've got organisational abuse. So this one was previously known as institutional abuse. So, but obviously we now have less large institutions, but lots of organised care. Okay, so this tends to be, yep, so someone's put Winterbourne View up there, absolutely. So the whole idea of organisational abuse is around people having abusive behaviour, and it tends to be almost enshrined in the policies or procedures of the organisation that they're working for. Okay, so it tends to be the abuse is happening because of the needs of the organisation rather than the needs of the person. So for example, things like, you know, toileting people. So the fact that, you know, everyone's toileted at the same time. Maybe people are put in pads because there's not enough staff on the rota that there should be, so they're not going to be able to toilet everyone's day. So they've put people in pads that don't actually need them because they can't toilet everyone. It may be around food and meal time. So having really, obviously, you know, there's a fine line. You know, residential care isn't a hotel, but you know, there should be some flexibility around meal times for people. You know, whether it's, you know, they don't fancy their meal now, but while the cook's there, they can make up a sandwich and put it in the fridge for later. You know, rather than just saying, well, if you don't eat this meal right now, there's nothing. Okay, so it's around kind of rigidly reinforced rules, etc. Okay, that are for the good of the organisation. Yeah, so someone's put on their pressure sores. Obviously, they can be quite a sign that people aren't getting the care that they should get. So, you know, people aren't being turned, moved, etc., when they should be moved, or repositioned when they should be repositioned. Okay, so pressure sores can be a good sign that something's happening. Yeah, we've got on there lack of training and poor culture. So as you saw in Winterbourne View, people were kind of inducted into this kind of way of treating people. Yeah. Okay, so all of those things lead to that kind of organisational abuse, and people tend to be scared to speak up about what's going on in there. So people quite often will leave rather than speak up about what's gone on. And again, there is whistleblowing legislation to protect people, yeah, but people can be quite worried about doing that. Before Winterbourne View, there was a really big one. It was back in the 80s where kind of the guy that was running it was linked to the police, etc. And he did loads of good and he donated loads of money, etc. And was at all the right charity functions with the chief of police and with all sort of the heads of council, etc. But it was very difficult to pin anything on because nobody would speak out against him because he was seen as being so high up. Okay, so there are quite a lot of high profile cases out there. Okay, quite a lot of TV documentaries that have followed some of them. Okay. So again, if things are meeting the needs of the organisation more and ignoring the needs of the people that are living there, it can come under organisational abuse. Okay. So yeah, honour-based violence tends to happen with, so I've had a question about honour-based violence. So it tends to be that happens between siblings or parent to child. So again, that would come under domestic abuse because it can be physical, psychological, financial, etc. Okay, and it tends to happen within families. Okay. So we've also got self-neglect on there. So that's the 10th category that's recognised under the Care Act. So self-neglect tends to differ from the others again because it tends to be the person who's not looking after themselves for whatever reason. So they're neglecting to care for themselves. It may be physically, it may be that they're not eating properly, it may be because of hoarding. It may be that they can't be bothered to attend their medical appointments. It might be that they're not able to attend their medical appointments. It might be that their house is really unclean and untidy, and it could be because they can't be bothered to clean it. It might be because they're not able to clean it. So has their condition changed? Are they not aware of it as well? So, are they not, did they come from an environment where they've never known how to do housework or look after their house? Okay. So there's lots of things that come under there. So you tend to find hoarding would come under self-neglect. Yep, so mismanaging their medication and not showering. So those ones would both be self-neglect as well. Okay. So if they're not able, if they don't take their medication when they should, for whatever reason, so it could be financial, it might be that they're struggling to pay for their prescriptions, it might be that they don't realise that they can get free prescriptions for whatever reason. Again, showering, is it because they're not able to? Is it because their shower's not working properly? Is it an issue, do they need an OT assessment to get their shower more accessible for them? Have they had a fall in the shower that's made them not want to shower? Yeah, is it a sensory thing? So do they not like the feeling of the shower? Are they not able to cope? And again, if they're refusing to shower but they're having a wash every day and keeping themselves clean, then they're probably not self-neglecting. Yeah, they might be perfectly able to put that in. And again, someone's put in there about not being able to afford food and starving. Absolutely. And I think, with things, we're probably going to see more of people not able to afford things and having to prioritise things like medication over food or food over medication and food over heating coming into this winter. Okay, and maybe they don't know where they can go and get help. Yeah, did they know how they to access a food bank? Do they know how to get that? Yeah. I think I missed on there refusing personal care as well. So, okay. So again, you know, if someone is refusing any personal care, that can, again, can be self-neglecting, depending on whether they are able to wash themselves and keep themselves clean, or whether they're choosing not to. Okay. And again, it can be quite hard to let a complete stranger come through your door every morning and give you a wash. Okay, so it's quite a big ask of people to trust a complete stranger every day. And hopefully, you know, you'll get a carer or a group of carers that you can build up a relationship with. But, you know, sometimes you will have that complete stranger walk through your door expecting you to strip off and give them and have a wash in front of them. Okay, so sometimes it can be quite a scary thing to actually let someone do personal care for you. Okay, so those are the 10 categories that we recognise under the Care Act. So hopefully I've given you a little whistle-stop tour of the 10 and what sort of things come under them. Okay, we don't need to get too hung up on the categories, because what we need to know is what we need to look for under all of them. Okay, I've also got another slide of other things that come in. So I think your honour-based violence is on here. Also, forced marriage can be comes under domestic abuse, but also gets talked about. So different to arranged marriage. So obviously arranged marriage, both people consent to the arrangement, whereas a forced marriage, one or both parties aren't consenting to it. So we've talked about honour-based violence. So violence, again, it usually happens within the family, so it'd be domestic abuse. But we've got cyber crime. So again, a lot of scams can come from that, a lot of befriending of people through the computers. And again, with lots of people being indoors more in the last 2 years, you know, there's been a lot more kind of people relying on forums, etc., for friendships. Okay, we've got hate crime on there. So obviously, depending on the type of abuse they were getting through the hate crime, but it probably would come under psychological. That hate crime, we've had there was quite a high profile case in Loughborough area of the Pilkingtons, which some of you might be familiar with, where the family suffered endless taunts, etc., from everyone in the neighbourhood, and they kept ringing it through and complaining to the police, who kept telling them to keep the curtains closed, etc. But yeah, they had teenagers kind of climbing all over their front garden and just generally taunting them continually, throwing things at the house, etc. And it did result in, I think it went on for about 10 years of them reporting it and nothing happened. And they did end up, I think the mother ended up killing herself and the daughter as a result. Okay. But I think if you read through it, eventually, you know, they actually came into the house as well. So it kept escalating and growing on that particular estate they lived on. We've got on there female genital mutilation, which tends not to happen to people as adults, tends to happen to people when they're under 18, but it's something to be aware of. Okay. We've got professional abuse and poor practice. So obviously that quite often comes under, or can come under organisational abuse. It could come under neglect. So again, that could be from any kind of area. So it might be a chiropodist not doing their job properly, a hairdresser, you know, charging for services that they haven't done, those kind of things. We've got county lines on there. Again, something that quite a lot of people, possibly with learning disabilities, etc., get caught up in. So that kind of moving drugs around certain areas and moving them into the county, etc. Okay, we spoke about modern day slavery on the other slides. So obviously modern slavery is part of there. Yeah, someone's put on their cuckooing as well. So obviously that can quite often be linked to that. So that's when somebody moves in with a vulnerable or an adult with care and support needs to kind of use their property, and quite often they take over the property. They might keep the person in one room and tend to use the flat for whatever they need. So whether it's moving stolen goods, moving drugs, etc. Okay. Quite often people can get caught up in gang culture as well, particularly our younger adults with care and support needs. Okay, they could be quite prone to being caught up in the kind of wanting to be part of something, wanting that flash mobile phone, those flash new trainers, etc. And then we've got on there scams and romance fraud. So obviously, again, people being befriended over the internet. Sorry about that. Okay. Not knowing who they're talking to. Again, there's quite a lot of people on dating sites who aren't who they say they are. Okay. So, and being able to spot the signs. So spot why the person doesn't want to, spot why the person, whether the person is real or not. Someone's used the term catfishing on there, which again can be one of the terms used when somebody's reeling someone in. Okay. We've got quite a lot of our particularly, well, actually it could be anyone, but there's particularly some younger adults who are desperate for a relationship, who tend to get involved in dating sites but aren't always able to notice whether someone's real or not. So whether it's quite clearly a photoshopped profile picture, whether the pictures they're sending them are real. And they tend to just want money, etc., sent so that they can come and visit you. So those sort of romances that aren't real. And quite a few, lots of people have been caught out by these. Sometimes it's very obvious early on the person's not who they say they are. Sometimes it can take people quite a while to realise that the person's not at all who they say they are. Okay. So all of those things can also be classed as types of abuse or neglect if they involve an adult with care and support needs. Okay. So one of the things we need to be able to do to keep our adults safe is to be able to spot the signs of abuse and neglect. Okay, so they can happen anywhere. They can happen in your own home or in the person's own home. It can happen in a public place, in a hospital, at a day centre, at college, or at a care home. So there's lots of different places that they can happen. Okay. And the person could be living alone. They might be living with others. The person causing the harm may be a stranger, but actually statistics show that more often than not, the person is known to the person. Okay, so maybe they've built up that level of trust with the aim of abusing the person longer term. But quite often the person is in some sort of position of trust and power. So they quite often are a health and care professional. Okay, so we do have some unscrupulous health and care professionals out there who do the job for other reasons. Okay, so we need to be able to spot that when it's happening. So if we can use the chat box again for a minute, so what sort of things might you see? Then we've got any examples of something that might worry them if they saw it? Yeah, in your day-to-day work, what sort of things would worry you, would make those alarm bells ring? Yeah. Hopefully you're all typing. You're all typing. Yeah, so we've got weather inappropriate clothing. Yeah, things like maybe trying to hide physical abuse. So tomorrow, someone who turns up in long sleeves. We've got decline in personal care, the person's appearance changing, someone being very unkempt and dirty, no money, even though they have everything in place, so they've got all their benefits coming in, but they've still got no money to show for it. They might be really distressed crying, so the really obvious sort of things that you might see. They might have erratic behaviour. They could be depressed and anxious, so do you need to unpick it, spend some time with them, get to know why it is. Not letting the person speak in consultation with the clinician. So what are they hiding? Is it the fact that the person's just shy, or is it the fact that they're not being allowed to speak? Okay. Generally being angry and agitated, what's that behaviour tell you, particularly if they're not normally like that? What's making them like that? We've got on there evasive behaviour. So, trying to avoid things. People have isolated themselves, refusing to access support services or not attending. So why are they avoiding that service? Why aren't they attending their medical appointments? Is it someone's not taking them, or is it the fact that they don't want to be seen by people? Yeah, something that's changed in their routine, not being able to see the person. We've also got on their family being used as translators, and that can be quite difficult. If you're not sure what's going on in that situation, can you be sure that the family are actually translating exactly what you want them to? So again, if you're not sure about the situation, you might need to get an external translator in. I've got avoiding seeing the doctors in there. Yeah. So maybe they don't want to have a physical examination or show anything. Again, we've got covering themselves up. Never going out alone. So why aren't they? Presenting at A&E regularly. Not being allowed access to the property. So is that because of the state it's in and they don't want you to see it? We've got weight loss on there. So the person, and that could be a sudden weight loss as well, and not planned. So obviously if the person's been on a diet and been trying to lose weight, you might expect to see that, but otherwise, why have they lost weight? And then we've also got the opposite, so the weight gain. So why is the person suddenly eating a lot? Yeah. Okay, so lots and lots of things there. I know I didn't quite get them all because my screen jumped quite a lot early on. I'm just going to go back and see. Yeah, so we've got on there staying out later at night or street sleeping even though they're at home. So again, why is that behaviour suddenly happening? What's making them want to stay out or not go home? Is it something, are they caught up in county lines, or are they just scared of something that's happening at home? Somebody looking to another person before they answer a question. Why is it they need that person's approval? Is it modern slavery? Is it domestic abuse? Or is it just that they lack confidence generally? Okay, so it's kind of finding out some of those things. Generally being withdrawn, and particularly if that's a change in behaviour. So it might be that they're always quiet and shy, or it might be that something's changed. What's made them like that? Yeah. Patients not knowing what money they have and no access to it. So again, why? Who's got control? Do they have any say over their money? Does that need unpicking? We've got general bruises and cuts, particularly if they're unexplained or in lots of different stages. Okay. What else have we got on there? So we've got things like attending appointments but not following the advice. So why aren't they doing that? Yeah. So they look like they're taking part, but why aren't they doing what we've discussed? Yeah. We've got stopped working suddenly. So, why have they suddenly stopped coming in? Yeah. Strangers being at the property all the time. Got falls on there as well. So the person suddenly started falling. Why? Is it not having their medication? Is it inappropriate footwear? Is it a cluttered environment? Unexplained injuries, and generally things not, is that not reported falls? So falls that haven't been reported. Okay. Okay, so lots of things on there. So they're all the things that you're going to be looking at day to day, all the things that might ring those alarm bells, all those things that you might want to question. And it could be, one of the most obvious ones that we quite often don't talk about is if the person actually turns around and says, someone's hit me, someone's taken my money, someone's taking my benefits. So someone actually disclosing it to you as well. Yeah. So it's kind of knowing what to do when you're in that sort of situation. Yeah, and we've got on there awake at night and asleep during the day. Okay, it might be that they're a night worker, but why? Yeah, why are they behaving like that? Are they doing something at night that they shouldn't be? Are they involved with something? Okay. And then we've got due to lack of safe, are they awake at night because the day staff haven't done things with them during the day, so they've been bored and slept all day. Yep, so again, that could be a sign of organisational abuse. Okay. Okay, so some of the ones that I've got. So behavioural signs of abuse in an adult may include things like we've got becoming quiet and withdrawn, being aggressive and angry for no obvious reason. That change, so looking unkempt, dirty or thinner than usual. Sudden changes in character, such as appearing helpless, depressed or tearful. Yeah, so in people that weren't like that before. The same injury is happening more than once. And sometimes it can be the sort of the look of the injury as well. So does it look like finger marks? Does it look like a grab? Yeah. Does it look like it was a slap? Physical signs such as bruises, wounds, fractures or other untreated injuries. So something that's quite obviously happened but they've received no medical help for it. Yeah. Or sometimes maybe they've been to A&E too often with similar injuries. Okay. Not wanting to be left by themselves or alone with particular people. Yeah. So is there people that they're worried about being around? Yeah. When a certain person comes near them, does their behaviour change? Do they suddenly flinch? Okay. Being unusually light-hearted and insisting there's nothing wrong. Okay. So are they trying to laugh off what's happening? Are they trying to pretend? Is it too big for them actually to talk about? Okay, so those are just some of the things. Obviously, you know, you've all named other things on the list that would give you concerns. Okay, so it's knowing what to do. So obviously, you know, what do you do when you've got concerns? So obviously we've got that kind of need to assess the risk. Okay. Yep, so someone's put there as pointed out as well that people might choose to go to different hospitals each time because obviously a lot of times across the hospitals they don't share records. So again, it might kind of cut down the amount that they're seen. Okay, so maybe they go to Kettering, Northampton, pop down to Milton Keynes, yeah, across into the cross border over into Rugby. Yep. Yeah, so we need to sort of assess the risk. So what is there immediate danger there? Is there something that means that we immediately need to get the police involved? Is there someone who's very physical? Yeah. Does the person need some immediate medical attention? Yeah. Is there a crime that's been committed? And is there still a risk to you or other people? So yeah, is it safe for you to stay in that area with the person? You know, if it's in their own home and the person who's, you know, and the person's still there, is it safe for you to be there or not? Do they still pose an immediate risk? Yeah. Okay. And again, yeah, if there's an immediate risk, what do you need to do to mitigate it? So do you need to get the police immediately involved? Do they need to go to the hospital to get their injuries sorted out straight away? Yeah. Or is it something longer term, lower risk, but still important, still safeguarding? Yeah. Have you got time to spend time getting to know the person, finding out what they want, finding out what's important to them? Okay. And again, yeah, who do you need to talk to about it? So all of you work at lots of different organisations, so you'll all have a safeguarding policy in place. So make sure you know what it is and who is who is your safeguarding lead. Okay. Okay, so someone's asked probably quite a long question there. So would self-neglect extend to not buying food? But what if they have dementia or other capacity issues? Would this still be safeguarding? If they're self-neglecting and not buying food, it probably and they don't have capacity for it. It probably wouldn't be safeguarding in the immediate term because they should be assessed for a care package, etc., and have care going in. Okay, obviously there are backlogs with that at the moment. Okay. But yeah, it would need to go, it would still be referred into adult social care, but not necessarily safeguarding, depending on sort of the bigger picture. Yeah. But okay. So use your safeguarding policy to know who it is you can talk to. Yeah, because obviously, you've still got an area of confidentiality with the person, but obviously there are people you can talk to about it within your organisation. So who is it you can talk to? Quite often it's your line manager or the senior on shift, etc. Okay, and then sort of between you, sort of thinking about the risk, etc., thinking about whether they need to we're thinking about whether you need to do anything immediate for the danger. Okay. And then you need to make sure that you document their concerns. So record the situation using what, when, who, how, date and sign. Okay, so we'll look into that a bit more on the next slide, but making sure that you've got everything you need documented and dated and signed. So Suzanne's advised that actually with the self-neglect, it would still be worth referring it in under safeguarding. Okay, and then the safeguarding would lead to whether a care assessment is needed or not. Okay. So yep. So because it would come under self-neglect in that situation. Okay. Okay, so when we're recording, we need to think about writing down as accurately as possible what was said. So if the adult did share some things to you about what was happening, okay, we need to make sure that we write down as much as we can what they said, possibly using their words as well. Yeah. Or if they've made a disclosure to you, what was it that they disclosed? Yeah. What were their words that they used? Okay. Did they say that the person shut them in their room? Yeah. Or did you just infer that from what they said? So what were the actual words that they said? Yeah. Also, you might want to include, and that's what you said. So what questions did you ask? Because as much as we want to ask open questions, things that are just like, oh, tell me what happened. Explain that a bit further. Describe what happened. Okay. So we've got all of those kind of questions that are quite good to ask. Sometimes we might ask them in the wrong way or slightly differently. So make sure you make a note of what you said. Okay. And again, you can use, if you can remember exact words and phrases, you might want to put them in quotation marks. Okay. And make it clear who said what in there. Okay. You might also record in there anything you observed. So if you saw something or, the person behaved different, how the person behaved differently when X person entered the room, how that person behaved, what was missing, what was changed, what was their posture like when you saw them, what were their non-verbal cues and body language that they were giving away. Okay. What behaviour changes you observed? Yeah. So what was it that's changed in the person? What was different about them? Okay. Any physical marks that you observed? Yeah, so where were they? What were they? Okay, and the names of all the people present. So who was around when you were talking about it? Okay, I need to sign and date it and give it to the relevant person. So whether that is, most of you will have a safeguarding lead in your organisation, okay, that you'll need to pass it on to, or whatever your procedure is in your safeguarding policy. If you're the safeguarding lead, then it will be putting it through the safeguarding adults board form. I think on one of my end slides, we've got all the links for where you need to go to. So obviously we've got a safeguarding adults referral for the West and one for the North now. Okay. I'm just going to run through a couple of things that have come up in the chat while we're talking. Okay, so Suzanne's put a link into the Northampton Safeguarding Adults Board decision-making framework, which could also help deciding whether something meets the threshold for safeguarding or not. So if you use that document, it can help you think about whether something needs referring through. Okay, so that's quite clearly on the website. We've got Wynne, I think you're from the police, from the attendance form. So you've put, when considering any police enforcement where the evidence is hearsay only, we can still consider options under the ASB legislation. The key is having good, well-documented disclosures. So again, writing down, so Wynne's reinforcing the fact you need to write down clearly what was said or disclosed to you. Okay. And someone else has said, make sure what you're writing is factual and not assumptions. So it is what you said, what you saw, not what you think happened or what you assume happened. Okay, just document what was said. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully that helps you to know what to record. And one of the things we've talked about all the way through is making sure we make safeguarding personal. So this was another thing that came in with the Care Act, and it's around making sure we engage the person in a conversation about how best to respond to their safeguarding situation. So one of the things that was sort of found before the Care Act came in was around kind of how we were very good at making people safe, but we didn't always think about what they wanted. It was safe. It's what we thought was safe, and that's not always what the person wants. Okay, so can we find out what it is the person wants to happen? Yeah. Okay, because that will help maintain their well-being as well if we're engaging with them and finding out how they want things done. Okay, so that can be really important to get to know what it is the person wants. And again, I think that's part of the referral forms, is to have something on there around what it is the person wants from this. Okay. And we need to make sure that safeguarding is everyone's business. Okay, so we need to make sure that everyone's aware of what to look like. Okay, yeah, so that's one of the importance of today's session, is to make sure that everyone is aware of what safeguarding means and what you need to look out for and what you need to do if you found it. And Wynne has confirmed he is from the police, and you are the ASB lead for Northants Police. Okay. So we've got the links on there to report in the concern. So there's one for North Northamptonshire and one for West Northamptonshire. We've also got some guidance on there that's on the NHS site around abuse and neglect, and then the link to the Northampton Safeguarding Adults Board website. And then we've got some further links there for the Northampton Safeguarding Adults Board. So there's quite a lot on them. There's going to be videos up from all of the sessions this week. Okay, as well as probably the ones from last time are staying on there as well. Yeah. Oh, and you can also report concerns on the NSAB website as well. Okay. And there's quite a lot of resources on there around safeguarding. You've got and Twitter as well, Suzanne's put in there. Okay. Oh, okay, and all the ARM resources are on there as well. So okay, so we've been asked a question: what if the person does not give consent? Can we still report the concern? Okay, so again, the situation, so thinking about the risk, so is anyone else at risk from this concern? If yes, then you definitely can. Okay. If as I say, if anyone else is at risk, so it's a public disclosure interest. If there's concerns about whether the person's got capacity and can understand to consent, then it would still be, then you could still report it in the person's best interests. Okay. If the person, as I say, if there's children at risk as well, you can go on to it might still be reportable. But if a person has got capacity, you're sure they've got capacity and they're absolutely, it's something that's only happening to them and they don't want it to go any further, we need to be aware that they're not being coerced at all as well. So that's something else to consider. Are they under any coercion? Because again, if they're being coerced, then they might not be speaking freely about whether they want to take it further or not. Okay. So I hope that helps with that question around consent. But people who have got capacity to make a decision can choose to say that they don't want it to go any further, and as long as there's no one else at risk because of it, no children at risk, and there's no coercion involved. Okay. Okay, I think the arm is a whole nother session. The person who's asking about arm, and there is a recorded session from last time that's up there that you can watch on the arm as well. Okay, Suzanne's confirmed that you don't need any links for the website, but it would these sessions won't be up for another couple of weeks. Okay. Yeah, as I say, there is a session from last time Safeguarding Adults Week about arms, so I'd go on and watch that. That's up there at the moment. Okay. And then there is an evaluation form. Okay, so to receive a certificate of attendance for today, you do need to complete your evaluation form. Okay, so I've put up a link which Chloe's also put into the chat for you. Okay, and you can also use your mobile to scan the QR code that's on the screen. Okay, and Suzanne's also confirmed that the ARM toolkit is available on the NSAB site as well. I'll leave Suzanne and Chloe. How long will the recordings stay on the website for?
They won't come down, they'll stay on there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation for today.